so much noise in the world. There's literal noise we can hear around us, you can hear around me right now. And there's all the noise of all the information and all the stimulation that we get from the whole environment around us, from the internet, from other people, from our very, very busy and active world, everything demanding our attention. The interesting thing about all that noise is something we get taught as children. Most of us get taught as children, silence is golden. And in the context of childhood, usually in the context that we are told that, it usually means, good kids are quiet kids in class. We all remember the schoolroom experience of a noisy classroom, how you can get punished for that, how that's the kind of ongoing battle between classroom and teacher. So silence is golden. A good class is a quiet class. Good little boys and girls are silent, usually in the context of classrooms, as I said. We don't really get to interrogate that idea very much. We don't get to think about it in any bigger context. Certainly, I don't remember as a child being taught any way to understand that beyond the context of the schoolroom. And yet, as we get older, certainly as I got older, I began to understand a great deal of wisdom in the power of silence. So, silence, man of few words, all those kind of ideas that seem to imply that there is some form of greater wisdom in keeping silent. Today we're going to have a look at the words of the great Buddhist teacher who recently died, Thich Nhat Hanh. He wrote a little book on silence that is full of great wisdom about it. And I'd just like to share a little bit of that on today's show. Many great teachers teach us that silence is equatable with wisdom. Although, of course, we do need to communicate with each other, silence really refers to how we consume all the information, the sounds and thoughts that are going on around us all the time. Hanh said, all the sounds around us and all the thoughts that we constantly replaying in our minds can be thought of as a kind of food. As we said, sound carries ideas, it carries the thoughts of other people, it carries even unsolicited ideas or thoughts. We can't really switch on and off our ability to hear, so we're constantly bombarded by them. So Hanh goes on to say, we are all familiar with edible food, the kind of food that we can physically chew and swallow. But, he says, that's not the only kind of food we humans consume. It's just one kind. What we read, our conversations, the show we watch, the games we play, our worries, our thoughts, our anxieties, they are all food. No wonder, he goes on to say, we don't often have space in our consciousness for beauty, for silence. We are constantly filling up on so many other kinds of food. Think about that. Think about if you go to your favorite restaurant to partake of a delicious dish that you really love. There's a great chef who's cooked it, you've waited ages to have this particular delicacy. Along the way, you pass many junk food outlets and you are compelled to stop. You can't help yourself. You stop along the way because there's something that draws your attention every single time. And so you fill up on all that junk food. And that's how we end up not having any space in our stomachs for that delicious meal that the Michelin star chef prepared for us. that we've been waiting for. So, as Hanh says, that's what we are doing with sound and thought. We fill up our consciousness with all the different ideas that are constantly coming at us, the different sounds, the different things that we engage in, not only sounds. Silence doesn't only refer to the voice, but it refers to the mind. So if our mind is constantly busy with all sorts of things, there's very little space for anything else in it. Our worries, our thoughts, our anxieties are all food, says Hanh. No wonder we don't have space in our consciousness. It's the same that all that junk food is still food. It might not be food that's good for you. It might even make you sick, but it is still food. It fills up your stomach, and you get to the Michelin star restaurant and you can't appreciate, you might be able to like shove it in, but you can't really taste the difference. You're feeling a little bit sick, you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed. You might not even be able to tell, why is that such a great meal, when all that junk food pretty much tastes the same to you by that point. So Hanh teaches a Buddhist principle that there are essentially 4 kinds of food that every person consumes every day. In Buddhism, they're called the 4 nutriments, but they're essentially 4 ways that we consume. Firstly, obviously, there's actual edible food. And that food can have a strong effect on us. It can affect our moods, it can affect our behavior, it can affect our energy. We know that if we adjust the quality of the food that we actually physically eat, we adjust the quality of our bodies and our day-to-day experience. That really should be enough information to get us fixing all the kinds of foods that enter our cells, our bodies, our minds. We know that if you eat good quality, whole, natural foods, you'll be healthier and you'll have more energy. Just like we know that if you eat refined foods and junk foods, you'll be unhealthier and have less energy and possibly eventually get sick from that. So we can be very discerning about what we eat. If we want good physical health, we get very discerning about what we eat. Taking the extension of the idea that then everything we consume, everything is a food, everything is a nutriment, must be affecting us, we would need to become more discerning about what those are. So the next kind of nutriment that Hanh refers to is sense impressions. So everything that we see, everything that we read, everything that we watch, books and magazines, TV shows and movies, websites that we read and visit and take in all that information, social networking sites full of information that is essentially unmoderated, just masses of different information. All of this causes an impression on us, even conversations that we have. And with all of those things, long after you finished reading it, long after you're off Facebook, long after you've even left that amazing conversation with your friend, we are working it over. Our minds continue to chew on all that food, that sensory input that we've acquired. So if we're spending so much time chewing on things, presumably, thinking about real food again, we'd want that to be tasty, nutritious, although at some point we'd have to stop chewing. I mean, it sounds a little bit like we're getting to be like a ruminant animal, like a cow that continuously regurgitates and chews and regurgitates and chews the same food over and over again. Now, cows have 3 stomachs, and that's important for them then to be able to do that, but we've only got one mind. And so we fill up that mind and chew on that stuff over and over again, and our mind is full, unable to take on anything new, and that continues to affect us. One of the most important kinds of nutriment that Han refers to is volition, or will, or motivation. So the question becomes, what is your primary motivation? Do you want to grow your relationships? Do you want to see how much money you can make? Do you want to succeed at work and become the boss? Do you want to grow and serve the world in some way? Or alternatively, do you want to get more likes and more followers? Whichever it is, this will, this ambition, this goal is constantly with us, and we're consuming it every day, all the time, throughout the day. Hans says, we rarely offer ourselves the time and space to ask the question, am I doing what I most want to be doing with my life? And do I even know what that is? There's so much noise in all of that, even in the doing of what we think we should be doing, that we actually lose any sense of knowing what we really want. Hans says the noise in our heads and all around us drowns out the still small voice inside. We're so busy doing something that we rarely take a moment to look more deeply and check with our deepest desires, how does that something fit in? So will and motivation are good things, but not all will is from the heart. Not all motivation is pure or good for us. If your only motivation is to make a huge amount of money or get a huge amount of followers or something like that, you might not end up with a satisfying life. We get warned by Han. It might be momentarily satisfying, but those goals are not ever complete. How many is enough followers? How much is enough money? Those unfinished goals tend to generate more of the same, and even if they didn't, how much satisfaction do we really get? It might be possible, but at the very least, we've actually got to ask ourselves the question, does that motivation come from my heart? Why am I doing what I do? Do I love what I'm doing? Thich Nhat Hanh gives a very powerful way to check with ourselves by asking ourselves the question, am I doing what I most want to be doing with my life? And if not, do I actually know what that is? You might not. And maybe part of the reason why you don't is because you've never had the space to really consider that. With all the noise going on, you've never really found the space to consider, is this the thing that I really want to be doing with my life? Because when are you waiting for to do the thing that you would do with your life if you could? This is your life. You could be dead tomorrow, as the Stoics often tell us. So, am I doing with my life what I really, really want to? The only way to answer those questions in an authentic way is to give yourself the silence through which that still small voice can tell you, can whisper into your soul's ear and help you find the direction in your life. Hans says, when you've been able to still all the noise inside of you, when you've been able to establish silence, a thundering silence in you, you begin to hear the deepest kind of calling from within yourself. What am I called to do? Why don't I know? Because maybe you can't hear the calling. Maybe there's not enough silence. Switch off, and you will hear the deepest calling inside yourself. The fourth nutriment is consciousness, our own consciousness and the consciousness of the other people around us and everyone around us, the collective, your friends, the community, because you're engaging in all of that, because you're engaging in the social media and all that consciousness enters into your own. Consciousness in the world enters into your own. Think of news, think of the pandemic and how everyone's consciousness is affected by these large things. And think of yourself and your immediate environment and the concerns or issues happening to someone close to you. Someone else's consciousness continuously entering into your own. Hans says, even if we're not talking with others, reading, listening to the radio, watching television, or interacting online, most of us don't feel settled or quiet. This is because we tuned into an internal radio station, radio NST, non-stop thinking. Even when we're sitting still, with no external stimulation, an endless internal dialogue seems to be going on inside our heads. We're constantly consuming our thoughts. And that is where we can be compared with ruminant animals, where we just chew over the same thoughts over and over again. And unfortunately, that is primarily negative thoughts, or at the very least, thoughts that get us absolutely nowhere. Just by that repetition over and over again doesn't help us advance understanding or realization that we think that we're trying to get from thinking about it over and over again. Hans says we need to learn to turn off radio and non-stop thinking. It's not good for our health to consume from our own consciousness in this way. This combination of rumination and negative mood is toxic. And in fact, research actually shows that people who ruminate, think things over and over again, while sad or upset, are actually likely to feel powerless, self-critical, besieged by bad circumstances, pessimistic, and generally negatively biased. We're doing it to ourselves much of the time. So Hahn points out many cultures practice fasting for some particular holiday or for some particular period of time or for some particular ritual or something like that. And some people just fast for health reasons. This is worth doing, not only for our body, but also for our consciousness, he says. Every day we take in a multitude of words and images and sounds, and we need some time to stop ingesting all of those things and let our mind rest. A day without the sensory food of email, videos, books, and conversations is a chance to clear our mind and release the fear, the anxiety that can enter our consciousness and accumulate there. When we constantly bombard ourselves with external stimuli, we're not giving our minds enough time to recover, to clean up all that residual stimulation, the fear, the anxiety. We need to fast. We need a fast from information. We need a fast from all the sound and the ideas and the input going on, because how else are we to find that silence? So imagine a day without the internet, without your phone. Try and switch off your phone and leave it until tomorrow. Don't go to your computer. Switch off all those stimuli and take it even further. Don't read a book. Don't allow any kind of input. Don't even have a conversation. An amazing diet, fast that you can do for yourself in the next week, one day, is to spend 24 hours with no input whatsoever, sitting quietly, allowing the inner voices to surface in some way. And even if you have to go to work, we tend to separate, this is my work, and then I can get home and do my mindfulness. We need to find ways to bring mindfulness into our day, into everything. We might start by creating a little space for 5 minutes, but then taking it into our activities that we have to do. In the same way that we need to try and be present and focused and living in the present and trying to feel motivated and even joyful by the thing we are doing right now, whatever it may be, even when it's the smallest thing. When we learn to do that, we learn to break down the separation between this is what I have to do, this is work, this is when I finally get to be mindful, I never get time on my own to be mindful. When is it ever going to happen? You can't create the silence if you're waiting for your few hours a day, if that, when you can actually get some time for yourself. There's no such thing as that. Remember, we spoke about Seneca a couple of weeks ago. Seneca tells us, what are you waiting for? You could be dead before you retire. So you can't sit and wait until you've got time for your own stuff. You've got to bring that into everything. So he suggests the start is to bring mindfulness into everything. Consciousness, aware of what you're doing, aware of yourself, aware of what's going on, but doing it with intention, with mindfulness, with joy and living in the present, focusing entirely on that present moment. That's what allows us also to sit in complete silence. If we bring mindfulness into everything that we do, if we learn to break down the imaginary divides between what I have to do and what I am doing, and when I'm working and when I'm playing, we learn to bring mindfulness into everything, and we learn to become much more discriminating about the nutriments, about what we are feeding into ourselves, and we learn to find some silence in all of that. So how do we just bring a little bit more mindfulness and presence and focus and joy into everything that we do? Hanh says, our true home is what the Buddha called the island of self, the peaceful place inside us. That's where we need to go to. Marcus Aurelius, our favorite Stoic, said, men seek for seclusion in the wilderness, by the seashore, or in the mountains, a dream you have cherished to yourself fondly. But such fancies are wholly unworthy of a philosopher, since at any moment you choose, you can retire within yourself. Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul. Above all, he possesses resources in himself which he need only contemplate to secure immediate ease of mind. The ease that is just another word for a well-ordered spirit. Avail yourself then often of this retirement, and so continually renew yourself. So the silence exists within ourselves. We need to find that still space within ourselves by eliminating all the input, and so then we find it. We need to eliminate a lot of the negative thoughts and all the rumination that we tend to do over and over again. Francis Bacon said, silence is the sleep that nourishes wisdom. In the end, arising out of all that silence, beyond even something like a calling, is wisdom. Wisdom is knowing when not to speak. Wisdom is keeping silent rather than engaging in the argument. Wisdom is scrolling past that triggering Facebook post and not engaging, because all it does is fill your mind with negative nutriments that fill up all the space so that the self cannot be heard. It is the self that you want to hear. Well, maybe there'll be a day when we can sit here quietly together for half an hour, even on TV. But until then, I've still got a few more things to say, so I'll see you here next week.